Hey guys, ChrisFix here, and today I'm going to show you what happened to our Lemon BMW endurance race car. Just in case you guys are new or don't remember, last year I was challenged by eBay Motors to get an endurance race car and race in the 24 Hours of Lemons, which is a wheel-to-wheel endurance race where you can't spend more than $500 on your car. That way, how fast you are doesn't have to do with your bank account or how much money you put into the car. Everyone here has a piece of junk, so it really levels the playing field. And if your car is over budget, you get penalty laps. So for our $500 car, we found a 240,000-mile all-wheel drive BMW 330xi. Now, we got this car so cheap because it had scuffs all over it, cracks in the bumper, the car was keyed on both sides all the way down the car, and there's dents and scratches all over the place. Now, we don't care about how it looks because this is a budget race car, and that works to our advantage because we only paid $1,100, which is a really good price for a BMW E46. But this means we're $600 over the $500 budget, and that gives us 60 penalty laps, which makes us not competitive at all. But there is a way we could bring that price down so we have no penalty laps, and I'm going to show you how we did that in a second. We also got it cheap because it had a few major problems that we had to fix. So first, I showed you guys how to fix the rough idle we had, which the car would barely start, it would barely run. And when we scanned the car's computer, we figured it out. Our mass airflow sensor was not working, so out with the old and in with the new. Then we just had to make sure it was snapped in place like that and connect that wiring harness. And with that swapped out, we started her up. And now the car actually runs. It started and idled perfectly. Next, we had to fix the giant hole in the roof due to the sunroof not being able to close. Luckily, there's an easy fix for this, so I accessed the sunroof motor, and there's a torque screw that you spin counterclockwise to manually close the sunroof. That way, we didn't soak the interior. The next major problem we had was the power steering. It was not working at all, and the weight of this car, along with the suspension geometry because it was all-wheel drive, made this really difficult to steer. So I showed you guys how to remove the old power steering pump and install a brand new one, as well as remove the old rusty power steering lines and install brand new ones. And one thing I really liked that we did was take apart the old power steering pump and see how it failed. A piece of metal got into the pump, jammed it up, and that caused the impeller to shear off. So while the pulley did spin, the impeller didn't pump and there was no power steering. So after installing all the new parts, we filled the pump up with some brand new fresh power steering fluid. Then we started the car up and tried it out, and we had nice and light steering, finally. There's no way we could use that stiff steering in an endurance race. So with all those problems sorted, next we had to get the car ready for a full roll cage, so I completely gutted the interior of the car. To make things interesting, before I removed everything, we did some 0 to 60 runs. And the nice thing about all-wheel drive is how consistent this car is. We went from 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds. And then we also did a 60 to 0 braking test. And it took 170 feet to brake from 60 miles an hour, which is actually really bad. So back home, I purchased these special scales that went underneath each tire of the car, and we weighed the car, which weighed 3,370 pounds. Then I started removing interior pieces, and I broke it down into sections. First, we removed the front and rear seats, which weighed a total of 180 pounds. And don't worry, we're going to be installing a racing seat, which only weighs like 20 pounds. Then I removed everything in the trunk, which weighed 75 pounds. Then I removed all the plastic parts and speakers in the car, which weighed 50 pounds. Then all the carpeting came out, which weighed 45 pounds. Then the sound deadening had to be removed using dry ice to freeze it. And then I used a hammer to shatter the sound deadening and separate it from the sheet metal. This was very important to do because the roll cage can't be welded to the sound deadening. It can only be welded to the bare metal. Also, if there's a fire, burning sound deadening isn't good. It emits poisonous fumes. So we had to do this for both safety, and it's good because we got a lot of weight out of the car. And finally, I removed another 40 pounds from the roof of the car by removing the headliner and glass sunroof. This also lowers the center of gravity, which is good, but it leaves a huge hole. So I installed a composite fill panel that weighed 2 pounds and closed off that giant hole in our roof. So with pretty much everything except the dash removed from the interior, we removed 430 pounds, which brought the weight of the car below 3,000 pounds, which is really good. And to see how good, we went back to the track and did our 0 to 60 test. The car felt quicker, and the numbers showed we were almost a second quicker at 5.97 seconds. And then even better, our braking from 60 miles an hour went from 170 feet to 140 feet, a 30-foot improvement, and we didn't even replace the pads or rotors yet. So with the car fixed and completely stripped, we were 3 weeks away from our first endurance race. So we shipped the car out to the welder so we could get that roll cage in, and that's the last that you guys have heard of this car. All right, so we got the car back from the welder, and check out this awesome roll cage. Now, time is of the essence here. We don't have a lot of time till the race, so I just want to cover this real quick. But we went with NASCAR bars for the side. This is a full 6-point roll cage. So the front right here, you can see we have our anti-intrusion bars. What this bar does is it prevents the wheel and the suspension from pushing in the case of a front impact. Now you can see anywhere our roll cage is mounted to the frame of the car, which is a unibody, they use these large pieces of sheet steel. This is relatively thick, and the whole point of this is to distribute the load over a large area. Sheet metal on the unibody is relatively thin, and if we roll over or get into an accident, we don't want our cage punching through the frame. So this distributes the load. And this is at every point in the car where our roll cage meets the unibody frame. This is very important to do, and you can see all of these are done very nicely and have a nice large surface area to distribute any forces from an impact or rollover. And the entire cage came out awesome. He did a great job. Look at these dimes. This is all MIG welded and has good penetration, and we know we're gonna be safe. And you can actually see there's a little bit of rust here, so we're gonna have to paint this cage after the race. You guys could actually let me know what you think would look good as a roll cage color. Here's a couple different options we have. Just comment below and tell me what you're thinking. I really like this blue, and I think it goes with the soapy water theme. So not only did we get this amazing roll cage installed, but we also had our subframe reinforced, because the subframes on these E46 BMWs are known to tear and rip under hard driving, and we're gonna be driving this incredibly hard for long periods of time. And here's an example of that with my friend's E46, where the subframe bolts up. You can see the frame is cracked and starting to rust. And that's just a street-driven car. On the track, these are known to actually tear. Well, with this setup, we don't have to worry about that. The subframe is tied in to our body very nicely, and also we have it tied into our strut towers here on both sides, and this car is gonna be extra rigid, extra safe, and that's exactly what we want. So in total, this cage cost us $3,800, and we did go a little above and beyond on what the minimum cage requirements were, because my team's safety is very important. Now, unfortunately, we only have 5 days until the race, and we have to do all of these things before the race, so I'm not gonna be able to film every single thing. I'm gonna try to quickly cover it for you guys so you get an idea of what we had to do. First, we had to sell at least $600 worth of parts from our car to offset the $1,100 we bought it for. That way we could get rid of these 60 penalty laps we're gonna have. So that was teammate Pierce's first job, and he filmed a bunch of it so that we had proof for the judges at the race.
Just sold A, B, and C pillar, and also the thing that comes up from the floor. Bottom for $100 right there. Just sold the center console for $100. Just sold the sunroof cassette. Went ahead and installed the sunroof. Got the parts right there for $160.
I'm Reese Jones, and I just bought this sunroof cassette for $160.
So we actually ended up selling $720 worth of parts, bringing our cost down below $500 to $380, and hopefully we won't have any penalty laps. Now for the race car, the first thing we did is install a cool suit system, which is basically a cooler with a pump in it that gets strapped down in the trunk of the car and circulates ice cold water to keep the driver cool. All right, I realize we don't have a lot of time, but this is a very important thing. I do want to explain it. We just got our cool system installed, and the reason why this is so important is it's going to be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit inside of this car while we're driving. We have a full race suit on, race shoes, gloves. We're covered for fire safety, so this is what's going to keep the driver comfortable. We fill this up with water and frozen water bottles, and this pump circulates all that cold water out of our hose right here into our cool shirt. And our cool shirt has a connector right here, so we just simply connect our hoses just like that, and now this is gonna pump all cool water right through this shirt, which is touching our skin, so it keeps the race car driver nice and cool. Next, we installed the comm system, which allows the driver to communicate with the rest of the team. So we drilled a hole in the roof of the car so we could fit the comms antenna. And this antenna is gonna give us enough range so anywhere on the track, the driver and the team could communicate with each other for things like driver changes, gas stops, and just overall what's going on during the race. And then for the comms, we have a really nice setup. So this is for the team. You can use a walkie-talkie like this, and we have a really nice headset so we could communicate easily and hear everything, even with all the loud noises going on. And then for each of our helmets, we're gonna have a really nice setup where we have a microphone that is wired into our helmet and a speaker that's wired in there. That way we could speak to the team as we're driving. And we figured this would be a good spot for our button to transmit. So whenever you need to transmit, you need to talk to the team, you just press this and hold it, and it's on the shifter so that we don't have to let go of the shifter if we're racing. Next, we installed high-end USA-made toe straps which screw right into the stock toe locations on the rear bumper and on the front bumper, so if we do happen to need a tow, the track workers could quickly and easily hook up to this, and then we could safely get our car towed off the track. Then we had to fix a major exhaust leak, so we took the exhaust off and installed a new gasket. But anytime the exhaust is off, you guys know it's a rule. You have to start the car and give it a few reps. Give it a rev. That doesn't sound as good as I thought it would.
Like that.
That's not bad.
It's gotta stay like that. We'll never hear anything.
Yeah, it'll be a horrible 24 hours. Do it one more time. With the exhaust leak fixed, next we had to install a very, very important fire suppression system. And I'll make a full video on how to install this because we learned a ton while rigging this up. And we also did a test fire to show what it's like. Okay, we got a fire in our car. Man, that is hot quick. So I'll show you guys more of this in the dedicated fire suppression video. But for now, in our car, to set off the suppression system, you pull this right here, and right below that, we installed our battery cutoff. Next, each of us on the team got into the car to make sure the seat was set to the right distance from the wheel and pedals. Then we installed the quick release steering wheel, which don't worry, I'm also gonna have a full video on this, so stay tuned for that. And then next up, our brakes were really rusty, so we got new OEM calipers and rotors, and we got special endurance race pads from NRS, so out with the old and in with the new. And then we installed new stainless steel brake lines because the old brake lines were pretty worn out and sketchy. And finally, we flushed all the old dark brake fluid out of the system, which was probably safe to around 330 degrees Fahrenheit before it boils. And then we filled it with new racing brake fluid, which cost $40 a liter, but it won't boil until 620 degrees, which is what we need for heavy braking during racing. And then finally, we got our new tires, and I listened to you guys and read all the comments recommending Yokohama Advan A052s, and we went as wide as possible with the stock wheel and stock offset so we could maximize grip. Also, the tread wear on these is 200, which is above the 190 tread wear minimum, so we are race legal. Now, these new wheels and tires weighed 30 pounds less total than the stock setup, which is all unsprung rotational mass, so that is a huge difference. And finally, a day before the race, we got our car aligned, and for this alignment, we used race specs for the camber and toe. That way we can maximize grip, but also keep our tire wear to a minimum so they would last as long as possible. So this was only some of the stuff we did to the car, and we worked from 6 a.m. to midnight every day for 5 days straight, and finally the car was ready to race. We packed her up in the trailer, and while the car was ready, us as a team, well, we were very far from ready. We had no seat time in the car, and none of us had wheel-to-wheel racing experience, so what's the worst that could happen? So hopefully this catches everyone up on what happened to our LEMONS BMW race car, and in the next video I'm going to show you guys our first ever endurance race experience, including the tech inspection, the BS inspection, what it's like to actually race wheel-to-wheel, as well as the fate of our race car. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. And finally, the next video about our race and the catastrophic failure we had will be posted very soon, so keep an eye out for that.